I think I've got that up there. I'm going to hit invite friends real quick. Just give me a few seconds here. And hopefully I can grab some of you guys. And we'll get it done. All right, today I'm going to go over some more of the pollen collecting with you guys. Last time I think we talked about just the basic tapping the pollen in with the capsicum baccatum. So like today I've got the Omnicolor, and that's a nice beautiful plant for me. But I use these, I'll take it, I'll put it in here, and then I'll hold it down, and I'll just tap it, excuse me, and pull that up there. So I'm just thumping the container. There you go, now you can see it. And that just fills it up with as much pollen as is in there. Now, obviously, if you can get, different times of day, you might notice a flower has better pollen. And if I wasn't doing this on video, I could get a lot more because I wouldn't have to collect these and then try to set up everything. But this is basically it. You just take it, and then what you really want to do is label the side. Now you see I wrote on the side. If I rub on that really hard, that'll come off. Other than that, it usually won't. So I try to put some tape on it just to be on the safe side, and then I'll seal that up after an hour or two. And that's as easy as it is to collect your pollen. And that's pretty easy with the bacatums, some of your others. I'm going to show you here real quick. So that's that one. I think I have one more baccatum flower. Let me, for my Omnicolor, just collect a little bit more. And then you can use these in transport. I've actually sent pollen from Belgium to the United States and received pollen as well. So what I've had one of these actually sent to me while I was living in Belgium and successfully set seeds with it. So I don't know how long you would want to store it for, having done that, but for me, I found that it works. So you can do that. You just need to dry it really well before you send it. And when I did that experiment, it was in the winter. I don't know if that had any bearing on it, but it worked for me. All right, and then show you here real quick. These are my one of my favorite Roxa Lanterns. And if you can look at the bottom there, that's when it's right, when you see that gold start to pop through. And then this particular one, I don't think you can see the gold all the way through, but basically you're looking right where the pistil used to be. And that has a little splash of gold in this one as well. This particular variety is a little darker. I'm suspecting a little bit sweeter. And this is my favorite right here just for the way it looks. So I did find out, and you guys may already know this, but if you put them in a plastic bag, I can get them to ripen a little bit further without drying up. As I tried an experiment where this one's kind of all dried out, it ripens up a little bit more, but it dries out. But the plastic bag holds in the moisture. Anyways, you guys may have known that. That's something I just found out. So I figured I'd share that with you. Just an experiment that I did. All right. I gotta eat the rest of this. All right. Well, I've got a bunch of these, so I'm going to show you another flower. This is not optimal, this one. I can tell that right off the bat, but it's a nice little Chinese flower. You can look at the back of it. It's got a little bit of purple running through it. And then you got a little bit of purple right there on the peduncle. So calyx on this one appears to be green. So we'll tap it, and hopefully we'll get some pollen to come down through there. But even if it doesn't come down for this particular one, if I picked it wrong, sometimes it dries up on there, and when it's dried up on there, you can still use it. It's just harder to get it off of there because most of it's been busted out. So I would only use that for about one pollination if I noticed that. See if this one did any better. Trying to look through my bifocals here on this one and tap it. Now, if you don't see it, it's best to go ahead and sterilize it anyways, because chances are there's still some pollen in here, just not much. All right, so that one was a bust for us. So I tried to show that one to you. I'm going to update you here real quick. So on this one, we have the larger one. This is my Uchu, and the larger one is, as you'll notice, it's a scarlet. So that's my Scarlet's Chili cross. So those should all be variegated. And then the smaller here, smaller pod, if I can get my fingers out of the way, that's a Chinense cross. So interspecific, interspecific. This one is going to be the one that I'm really hanging on to. But if you look right where they join, they were crossed at the same time. So differences in size. That's about the only thing I've noticed with interspecific crosses. Sometimes you'll get a smaller pod, but the shape and everything else should stay the same. All right. Real quick, I was going to update you here for those that care. I've got two of the Scarlet's Chili here, and it's just one phenotype. I just got lucky, and it looks pretty similar on both of these. And then over here behind you, I've got my Capsicum annuum, Variegata, crossed to my Capsicum baccatum Sugar Rush Peach. And I left some flowers on here today, or at least one. I hope I can show it to you. Boy, it may be hard. I might end up dumping dirt all over my computer. But if you can see that, it's got a little bit of purple on the edge of the flower, and then a little bit of white. So I'm doing some test crosses with this one. I've got pods all over it. I'm crossing it back to everything from Scarlet's Chili. I've got another one over here, Sugar Rush Peach. Can't tell yet whether that particular pod is making it, but I'm crossing it both ways just to verify that yes, it's what I think it is. And those test crosses should bring out the variegation and hopefully the baccatum looking flower back. And then I'm letting a couple of them just self as well. So anyways, when you do a cross, a lot of times you want to go back and forth to either parent just to make certain that's what it is. There's a lot of different things that can happen when a hybridizer's doing everything and he thinks he's being careful. You can get pollen on your fingers. You guys have probably noticed I've got dirty fingers sometimes. And that can transfer back and forth. You can miss something. But that's why I try not to be too hard on hybridizers or your F1s. That's your practice. Then when you grow that up, you say, okay, it looks like it's maybe, but I want to make certain. So you do your test cross and you verify. As I always say, the proof is in the pudding, and that's, you've got to breed that back and show that variegation is there and show that those other traits are there. So, awesome. Glad you received the football. It's got to have a lot of seeds in there, I imagine. The containers on these are called centrifuge or microcentrifuge tubes. So that's basically what they look like. You use these in the laboratory a lot of times and do a lot of work in there. I've worked in microbiology labs and different things like that where you need those to spin down blood samples and different things. You might spin whatever specimen you're spinning down. So, but they work excellent for pollen. A lot of people use those. Back in the old days, people would use film canisters, the old plastic film canisters. They would put the answers in there, dry them out, put them right in the film canisters. Sean Ackridge, he's mentioned he used the just a paper bag. Me personally, I got to go a little bit more hardcore than that. I got to put it in double containers. I'm sure you can get excellent results. Otherwise, he wouldn't do it like that. everybody experiments and they decide what their acceptable losses are. So thank you for the comment on the plant there. With 5 ml or point, the smaller the better as far as I'm concerned for the pollen. What I actually do, I'm going to show you a trick that I haven't shown here before. What I'll do with these, sometimes I'll do what's called a pollen dilution, and I'll add in a little bit of flour. And it's real hard because when you have such a small amount like this, you only want to add in about the same volume. So that's a real small volume. I probably wouldn't touch that one. I'd work until I got a little heavier load, but that flour will dilute it out a little bit. Guy named Albert Lee Blakesley, I believe I'm always butchering people's names, but he's a famous guy that worked with tissue culture, excuse me. But one of the things he discovered is that by diluting the pollen, it would allow the slower growing granules of pollen to meet and actually pollinate the ovules. Now, why that's important is normally only the fastest grains of pollen, the fastest germinators, make it there. So when you allow the slower ones to doing these pollen dilutions, you can actually affect the phenotype as well as the genotype, because those pollen grains would have never gotten there underneath ideal situations, and you're able to affect that kind of a change. So he was able to pull up some interesting things with the Datura by doing that. Another thing that you can do with pollen dilutions or mentor pollen is you can take two different varieties. Let's say this is Omnicolor, so it's baccatum. I might put a little bit of capsicum chinense in there, and then the one would act as a mentor to allow the other pollen to go into that ovule or affect that pod to start growing and help push it along, so to speak. Sometimes it can even stimulate the other pollen to germinate. But there's all different theories associated with that. I've got a little snapshot. I used to have a lot more saved, but there's like at least 5 different theories on how that works. And it doesn't always work, but it's something that you can try, and it's pretty cool to, if it does work. Bottom line, if I did a mentor pollen type technique, sometimes you can kill that pollen basically. That's one method that you can do. And you can, microwave it, leave it out in the open, freeze it, unfreeze it. But you're wanting to affect the germination, so not as much of it is this Omnicolor pollen if I was going to do a baccatum, for instance. And then the majority might be fresh chinense pollen. And then I would put it on my baccatum to affect that chinense crossing over a little bit easier, because it would recognize the actual Omnicolor or the same species. But that's one technique some of the hybridizers will sometimes use. Yeah, there's a lot of different ways that you can tell. I mean, with the Omnicolor, if you've got that and you breed it into the second generation and you've got that Omnicolor, that green throat, and you come over here and you say in your second generation you start seeing some of that, and it's a chinense, well, that's a dead giveaway. It probably worked a little bit. So I try to pick, when I'm doing a pollen cocktail or a pollen dilution with a pollen cocktail, I try to pick species or varieties that are different enough that it's going to be easy to tell within 2 generations. So variegated plant would be an excellent one to use with anything pretty much, because within 2 generations, if you get variegation, bam, you know that your cross maybe didn't work if that wasn't your intent. If it was your intent, then you know it did work as well. So the big thing is with those pairings, try to pick things that are opposed to each other enough that you can definitely tell. Anyways, I'm going to go, but I just wanted to show you those basic techniques. I think they're valuable. And again, worst case scenario, they don't work for you, move on, or alter your pollen cocktail or your dilution factors. You can do a 1-to-1, 1-to-2, 1-to-4. And then you can basically do a serial dilution with it as well, and you can do some of those things. Anyways, I'm going to go ahead and end this live video. I hope some of you guys liked that and it helped you guys out. And if you haven't looked at Brian Townsend's Roxa Lanterns, that's where I got all these. and they're excellent taste. So definitely check that out.